Hi and welcome to our program. Today we're going to learn a little bit more about the history of the harbor in Aarhus with Soren and then go for a walk in the South Harbor with Sarah. Let's go. Hi.
Hi, Rute.
How are you doing?
Thank you, I'm fine. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Yeah.
So, what do you want to show us today?
Well, first of all, I want to show you the great place of nr.1, which is where I work and which is where the city archive is. Mm-hmm. And next to that, I would like to take you on a small tour through the harbor area of Aarhus.
Yeah.
And well, my point is to tell you a bit about the history of Aarhus.
Mm-hmm. And starting with the river, right?
Starting with the river, because I thought that would be a very good place to start, because this is where the history of Aarhus starts as well. It may not look like a very old city, but Aarhus actually is a very old city.
How old?
It goes back to around 800 after Christ. So compared to other places in the world, it's not old.
Yeah.
But
in Denmark?
In Denmark, it was one of the first real towns or cities. So, and it all started here because this is very close to the river. Actually, this is what we call an å. In Å, which is a very small river, but it's one of the largest rivers that we have. And this is where the city started, and it was founded by the Vikings in the final years of the 8th century. So,
I read something that there was like a fjord, and then it narrowed into this river, and then something with the Brabant Lake. I was not sure about the...
Yeah, it's true. Everything looked very, very different from now. It's actually very hard to imagine what everything looked like, because I mean, we see a small river and we imagine it was like that forever.
Yeah.
And we look at the ocean or at the sea and we imagine it was like that forever, but everything was different. There was so much more water in general, because the level of the seawater was higher. There was more water because we had but a few thousand years before that, the Ice Age ended, and the ice was still melting. So there was a lot more water everywhere.
So this was all covered?
This was all covered by water, and there was another mouth of the river to the north of Aarhus. It's all gone now, and it went like around the inner city. So it was, And then there was this deep fjord stretching from here, going all the way up to Brabant.
Oh, that is really big.
Really big, and I mean, and we still have the river there, but it was a whole fjord. But now it's just a small river. So there was a lot of water, and that was why the Vikings came here, because the Viking king had an interest in protecting the waters and dominating the waters, and he needed a fleet. So he started, or he had people do, he started making ships, building ships, repairing ships a few miles from here. And that's probably why this place was picked. So it was because of the fjord, basically? It was because of the fjord, because it was a good place to make a shipyard and to have it located a little away from the seashore in protection. So people came here, but it was a very, very small town. I mean, look at the city now.
I cannot imagine.
No, it was very small. Maybe there were 200 people, 300, 500 people. It was like that.
Was that only at the beginning, or it stayed with 200, 300 people for a long time?
Nobody really knows how big exactly. But it's obviously at some point it started growing, and 500, 700. And one day there was perhaps 1,000 people here. So another thing that was very different, and let's start walking because I mean I have a lot of things to show you.
Can't wait.
Yeah, and now we're moving to the north, right? And the one thing that was very, very different from now was that there was a whole rampart, big walls made.
Okay, like protection.
Yeah, for protection.
Okay.
Not made by stone or anything like that, but by soil and grass and wood.
Like more natural built, kind of.
Well, I think it had a skeleton of wood and timber, and then on top of that and around of that there was soil and grass. It was very high, and it was all around the city.
Is there like in some cities where there was like big walls or something like this, you can still like the city keeps a line or something to remind people that it was there? Is there something similar here in Aarhus?
Well, there is actually, but it's a bit indirect, so to speak, because some of the old streets in the inner city
are built on top of the...
Exactly. So you can read from the way they curve that this is where the city rampart used to be. But there are no signs left of it. There's not a single trace left on top of the earth. Everything is gone like that. But I mean, at some point it was up to 13, 14, 15 meters high.
Wow.
For a reason. And you have to be careful here. Yeah. Put that over. And that reason was that occasionally Aarhus was attacked by foreign kings, mostly Norwegians. We had a lot of fights with Norwegian Vikings. And those attacks were, we imagine, very fearful. And you needed proper protection from that. So that's why you make these huge ramparts to protect the people.
Okay. So, was there a particular interest in Aarhus? Or was it Denmark in general? Was it because it was a growing city in Denmark?
That's a very good question. Well, I think the most important asset here to begin with was the naval fleet. All the ships, all the royal ships that were gathered here. And that, of course, was a very important thing to either steal or to smash, to destroy. Later on, when we arrive into the Middle Ages, around 900, 1000 years, then the church began. And from here we can see the cathedral, we can see the tower of the cathedral. And obviously the cathedral had fortunes, things that were appealing. Yeah.
Was there I'm not very aware of this wars.
No.
Between Norway and Denmark. Was there a particular reason or something that triggered it, or was it just?
No, but we shouldn't really call it Norway or Denmark. I mean, there were tribes or small kingdoms, and with a lot of followers around. But it was not nations like today. It was more, huge tribes or gatherings. The Vikings were, some of the Vikings obviously were peasants staying at home, taking care of family and agriculture and everything. But a huge part of the Viking way of life was to be aggressive, and to be dominating and to go into war. So this whole way of living, I suppose, was also part of why they went to war and why they attacked foreign places. And then there were a lot of fights between kinships, which one should take over after the king, and a lot of fighting like that. So
it was kind of a bloody period.
It was a rather bloody period in Denmark, but not nearly as much as all the damage that the Vikings made other places. in Eastern Europe, in present day Poland, Ukraine, and all that way down, and England, Ireland, France, Northern Germany. They went many places. So I think this was more peaceful.
Well, good to know.
Good to know. Yeah.
But like, I'm super curious.
Yeah. Do ask, please.
Where did they start? Where did they start going? What was the first, or do you happen to know? Yeah, like how did this whole world, not world domination, but this part of Europe domination came from?
When they started attacking the northern part of France and Ireland and England in the late 8th century, and then from there they took on, well, Eastern Europe later on. But at the same time, Vikings were striving internally.
Okay.
Yeah, from Denmark, or what we call Denmark today, in Sweden and Norway, etc.
So there were a lot of Viking tribes.
Yeah.
In a lot of places.
Yes.
In today's Denmark, Norway, and Sweden.
Yeah.
And that was basically the origins of.
Yes, but then at some point, one person stands forward as a king and has a higher position, and I think this making or the foundation of the first Danish kingdom was part of why Aarhus was made as a city, because if you want to have a city and you want to establish proper protection, you need the guidance of a king. You need someone who has a firm control of the area, and that person can only be a king. So when we enter, well, the 8th and 9th century, the kingdom gets stronger, and we get, at most points, we have one almost unrivaled king.
Okay.
So the cities start growing at that point as well.
Okay.
And so does Aarhus. Yeah.
And even in Denmark, were there more than today's Denmark again? Yeah. Were there more than one king? Was there more than one king, or was it a king for the whole? Do you happen to know that?
Yeah, but at some point there's only one king.
Okay.
But there's, as far as I know, there's no point in time during Viking Age, early Middle Ages, where the kingdom reaches out to all areas of Denmark. There's still grey zones where people sort of.
Okay, it was very gradual, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And Aarhus was not that important to the king. It was not a huge city. It was not, the center of focus.
Okay. What was the center of focus?
That was small cities today, like Ribe, which is to the south, very close to Germany. It was a very important city, and there were other cities, like Viborg, which is in the northern part. Copenhagen only becomes important later. So
the big cities today were not the important cities.
Not all of them.
How many years
not
ago?
all of them.
Okay.
But I think if you look at the big cities today, Aarhus is the only one that was also important at some level.
Yeah.
In the Viking Age.
Okay.
Almost. Yeah.
And I would like to ask you about the origin of the name Aarhus.
Aarhus, yeah.
Where did it come from?
It comes from the old northern word called Aarhus. And you know the word Aarhus from our art museum? It has the same name, Aarhus. And it means the mouth of the river. Means O means river. So it means the mouth of the river. Okay. So it says basically the city that is located where the river ends. That's Aarhus.
Very creative.
And it becomes Aarhus in time.
Yes.
Over time it becomes Aarhus.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, there are a lot of cities that don't have a particular reason for the name.
Well,
so it is quite interesting.
I think actually that most cities do have a reason, but but we're not able to reconstruct it. Why did they call it that? Well, we don't know.
Yeah,
but
it just sounded good.
In this case, we do know.
Yes.
Oh, it's a beautiful day today.
Yes,
huh? Yeah.
I'm so happy.
It's a great day.
Yes. Yeah. This is summer. This feels like summer.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
So now we're passing, and I'll get back to that, but now we're passing the old, in Danish it's called toldkammer.
Okay.
Toll is custom, so it's a custom house, the port house.
Okay.
So, and you can't really tell from here, but maybe you can tell from here if you have a look at it. If you look at it from the front, if you see it here from the front, it has the same shape as
symmetrical.
Yeah, it's the same shape as the city banner.
Ah.
Which you can see there over the main entrance. You can see the 3 towers, which is the sign of Aarhus, the coat of arms of Aarhus, and the city has this house has the same shape. So it's a visualization of the coat of arms of Aarhus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And how old is this building? Do you have an idea?
Yes, I do, because it says there on the top. So I can always remember. It's from 1897.
Ah,
yeah?
Okay, it's quite recent.
Yeah, it's quite recent. But everything you see here is recent from the point of view of a historian.
Yes, yes.
So there are no signs left here at this part of the section of the city that are really old. Everything that we see here are from later than 1860 or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what I was expecting. Super old.
Well, they could be super old because we do have super old houses in the city center, but not here.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense if this was emerged by water.
Yes, it actually was. And the old coastline, also when the Vikings were here, were a lot further back. On the other side of those buildings, you could imagine that the coast began. The coastline was all the way up there.
Okay.
So
yeah, it's a big difference. So yeah, it makes sense that these buildings are more recent. And why was this building built?
Well, it was built to mark the new statue of Aarhus. Many years later than the Vikings. So many years later. In the middle of the 19th century, around 1850, 1860, Aarhus almost suddenly began to expand very much, and the city grew a lot. And one of the reasons was the port, the harbor, because there was a new harbor made at that time. Up until that time, all the way back to the Vikings, ships were being taken upstreams in the river and not put outside. But around 1848, 1850, you start building a new harbor with huge facilities, with bridges and dock stations and everything that you see here. And all that was constructed outside of the city, on landfills.
Okay.
Yeah. So the city started expanding that way.
And what do we see from here? What do we see that it dates to that time?
From here?
Yeah.
Nothing.
So this building, that's the building.
Nothing here because it's the harbor and things are changing all the time.
Okay.
There are some old buildings over there, but still. But this house was made because the city was expanding and there was a lot more shipping and ships going in and out, and they needed to be serviced by the customs authority, and they needed a new house, but not just a facility. The city wanted a beautiful house that would welcome people entering the city by sea in a proper way. And this, so this was made. So what we see here, old stuff from here?
Or at least the structure. Or did the structure change that much also?
I think what you could say about the harbor is that things are changing all the time.
Yeah.
These first part, or these most interior parts of the harbor, were made in the 1850s, 60s, and 70s. These parts, and then it just started expanding in all areas. What you see over there is what we now call Aarhus Ø. I think most people know Aarhus Ø. It's where the city is vibing these days. It's sort of the front of the new Aarhus. Yeah. But that used to be the old container terminal.
So instead of having this part here, it was there.
Yes, and now they are over there.
Okay.
But they used to be there, and then by the end of the 1990s, it was decided to move the containers further away, and that made a lot of space available for city development and all these new houses. So Aarhus Ø is the story of a container harbor that was being made on top of the old harbor that was erected on the sea, so to speak, and now it's being transformed into a new city neighborhood, the housing, most of all.
And this neighborhood just started like 30 years ago, right?
Only 15 years ago.
15?
Yeah, almost.
Okay.
Only 15 years ago.
So 30 years ago they were emptying it?
Yeah.
And then it was a while that it was empty, or were they trying to do something else?
There was a short period of where the area was in transition, and there was, it takes a lot of construction work to,
I can imagine.
Yeah, and also making new dock stations out there, and new areas, and new canals. Everything that you see now, not everything, but a lot of the structure is actually new. It looks old, but it's new at Aarhus Ø. And at the same time, this whole new area here was made because if that was the container harbor out there, then this was the city-based or city near inner harbor, and there was industry here. There was factories here, and there was huge silos here for feedstuff and grains here, and all of that had to be torn down. And the only house that you can see now left from that period is that house, and that house as well. So, apart from that, everything here is gone, and so then not many traces left here.
Yeah. And what is that house? The other one that is also from the period?
It's a warehouse. Yeah, it was used for warehouse, and there were a lot of houses like that all over the port, but they're almost all gone now.
Okay. Yeah. Do you know if there's any particular reason why they kept this one?
It was kept because it was in use, and then at some point someone restored it and renovated it, and I think the main reason it is kept is because it's a beautiful bit. Yeah. Basically.
Yeah, and it is very nice that they decided to keep at least some things.
Yes. But the whole idea of creating this space between Dock 1 and Aarhus Ø is to make an open space where people can come close to water. And that might sound, very obvious. But
well, if there was a harbor here before, it was not an option.
And factories and storehouses and granaries and all that. When I came to Aarhus some 40 years ago or so, you could not go near the water here. You had to go all the way north of the city to the forest area, to Risco, or south of the city. You couldn't go to the waters because there were ferries and there were,
And how was, if you happen to know, how was the water quality in here at that time?
At that time,
do you know something about it? If it was also a factor on deciding to get the toxins and stuff away directly from the people, because it is present anyway.
Well, you wouldn't swim here.
Okay.
Because it was basically an industrial area.
Yeah.
And of course there were some water protection laws that you had to abide, but basically it was it was heavily polluted. From the 1970s, well, maybe from the 80s, it was getting better and better and better.
Okay.
But still, you would never dive here, and it would also be very very dangerous because there were huge ferries and a lot of ships here, so you wouldn't go in here. So, and now we have a ship coming in. I don't know. Oh, it's the ferry for Samsø, and I miss ships here. I really miss ships in the harbor. Now,
where do they stay now?
They stay on
the other side.
On the other side,
okay.
Because that's the most modern part of the harbor, and they stay on the northern side because that's where you have all the yacht facilities and sailing ships and all. So you have very few ships here, and I mean I really miss that because it gives a lot of energy and life and something to look on.
Yeah. So there's this and the ferry from Samsø. Where does it go?
It goes all. It ports there next to Dock 1, actually. So that's great.
Like behind.
Like behind that ship there, which is called Jakob. Yeah.
I don't think I had noticed this before.
No.
No.
And that
this
ship.
Is nice.
Have you noticed?
That is what, sorry?
That is the royal ship.
Ah,
That's,
okay.
Yeah, it's the Queen's ship. So when she was here 3 weeks ago in connection to her anniversary and birthday, and there was a huge celebration here, and she was welcomed here by thousands of people and the city mayor and a lot of people. But when she comes back to Jylland for tours, every summer she goes around Denmark for tours and visiting places, and then she will stay at the castle here in Aarhus called Marselisborg Castle, and she goes here by ship.
Really?
Not every time, but very often, and then the ship is here. So
that is really unexpected.
It's pretty cool, actually.
It is.
And that you have the Queen's ship in the middle of the city like that. Yeah, and it's a beautiful ship. So.
Yeah. Wow. But I had I thought this type of ship was mostly used like for formalities, kind of, you know.
Yeah.
And not used like because it's really beautiful and it feels like the type of ship that would just stay.
Yeah,
in one
exactly.
place.
Yeah. No, she uses it for her summer transportations.
That is so cool.
It is really cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah, and it's a very beautiful ship. Exactly. So.
Yes.
But apart from all, I mean, from this building and that building, if we want to see old buildings, and I think we should have just a few.
Yeah, we can.
We have to go to the other side, because then you start seeing all the houses that were made in the late 19th century, when the city really started growing.
Okay. So this was still with the coastline super
Yes,
backwards,
up,
right?
all the way up there.
Okay. Was it all the way to the cathedral, kind of, or?
Yes.
Okay.
No, not quite. More to the what we call a School of Cathedral.
Okay.
Aarhus Katedralskole, which is the school there, the very beautiful building there, made by the same architect as the Custom House.
Okay.
And this was the front line, and that's why we have all these beautiful buildings there, because this is where wealthy merchants and
it was also the first impression that people got from the city, so it makes sense.
Exactly.
That it was
nicer.
That was it for today. We hope you enjoyed this program. See you next time.